What's one delicious African dessert that a child from a part of Africa, living in a part of Africa, needs to experience now? Here's two I can't get over. One, chakri. Oh my. Call your Gambian and Senegalese friend right now. Second, mandazi. Somebody say Swahili. In this next episode, African children will get to discover more about the crustiness and sweetness of Africa. Welcome to the world of African ideas. I'm so excited to see you guys today. Thank you for visiting me once again. As you know, in the world of African ideas, you will discover great people, great places, great objects and inventions, great animals within the ecosystem, great foods, but best of all, great ideas to come out of Africa or that are connected with Africa. Is that wonderful?
Yes, Koko.
I'm excited too. As you know, in the world of African ideas, we begin every visit with a game. And I'm sure you haven't forgotten my favorite game, have you?
No.
Awesome. So we're going to start with a game. And this time around, I want you to name a place in Africa that starts with the letter D. Okay.
Denmark.
In Africa. Denmark is a place, but not in Africa. Yay! Yes, we have a whole state in Nigeria, West Africa, that is named Delta State. So very good, Jamiloju. My own place to share with you in Africa is the wonderful city of Dakar. Yes, Chimamanda?
I was going to say that, but I thought it wasn't in Africa.
It is in Africa. Dakar is a wonderful, lively city in the beautiful country of Senegal. In fact, Dakar is the capital of Senegal, and Senegal is in West Africa. Dakar sits where Senegal meets the Atlantic Ocean. It is a beautiful city. It is lively, and I said it's the capital, which means that government offices operate from Dakar. Dakar has very beautiful, busy markets. It has amazing, exciting music, delicious, flavorful foods. It is a coastal city and so gives you the best ocean views. When you visit Dakar, there are many beaches, they have great seafoods, exciting, thrilling music. It is a wonderful city and I want to visit it. Would you like to visit Dakar with me?
Yes.
That's amazing. So the next time we plan a visit to Dakar, I will be going alone. Thank you. And the next thing we do in the world of African ideas is I tell you a fantastic story. I have a special story for you today about a great African heroine who lived in the wonderful continent of Africa ancient years ago. I'm so sure you haven't heard of her. Let me be the first to tell you about the amazing warrior queen Nzinga of Angola. Have you heard of Queen Nzinga before?
Yes.
What do you know about Queen Nzinga?
Not really, but I've just heard.
You've heard her name before. Okay, let me tell you about this warrior queen, this brilliant strategist called Nzinga of Angola. Many, many, many years ago, all the way back in the 16th century, there was a powerful kingdom called Ndongo. Ndongo had a king called Ngola Kiluwanje. He was a great king of the Ndongo kingdom. But you see, Ndongo was very close to the coastal city, coastal rivers. And so very soon, Portuguese explorers and sailors began to visit Ndongo. You see, that period in the world, many countries in Europe were suffering from poverty, starvation, and lack of resources.
So they began to send explorers to different parts of the world to discover areas and kingdoms that had rich resources that they could gain from and use to strengthen their own kingdoms. That was how Portugal sent its own set of explorers and missionaries, Jesuit ministers, all the way to the Ndongo kingdom. They met the king of Ndongo, Ngola Kiluwanji, and they said to him, "Oh, we want to trade with you. We brought these goods. We also want to buy from you. We want to buy workers, laborers. We want to buy, some of the things that you have for sale." King Kiluwanji, Ngola Kiluwanji, was very suspicious. But in the tradition of African kings, he was hospitable to the visitors. He said, "Okay, you can stay with us for a little while." But you know what they came to do? They came to survey the land. They came to study the land, to see what it had, what resources it had, to study the layout, to see where it was strong and where it was weak, so that they would know how to conquer the land. They also wanted to befriend the king and make him feel like they were allies. So in the times that they were there, King Kiluwanje began to share some of his challenges with them. He told them that he was having a lot of challenges with neighboring, kingdoms, especially Congo. That they were difficult and they were threatening his kingdom, and they were always sending warriors to attack. And that he would like the help of the Portuguese explorers to conquer his enemies. That was a fatal mistake. He revealed that weakness to people who he did not know what their motives were. They said, "Oh, we will help you." But you know what they went and did? They went back to the kingdom of Portugal and told the king, "There is a very rich kingdom. They have great resources, gold, minerals, and best of all, people who can be sent to us as slaves to work on our plantations. They've told us that they are at war with their neighboring kingdom, Congo. We are going to go and exploit that weakness." So the king sent them with ships and soldiers and guns, because in Africa at the time, we had great warriors. We had great war techniques, but we didn't have the kind of sophisticated weapons that they had. We were still using spears and arrows. They had guns. And the difference is that a gun from a far range, you can shoot and immediately, terminate the life of your enemy. So these soldiers came on the ships, many of them. Ndongo thought they came to help him fight the enemy Congo kingdom. No. They attacked Ndongo himself, King Ngola, and they took many of his warriors as slaves and sent them back on those same ships to Portugal to go and work on plantations. They conquered most of the immediate areas by the sea, and they named that portion that they had taken over Luanda. They built a port there. A port is a place where they can be buying and selling, like a market. They built it in Luanda, right? But they were not content. They wanted to go far into Ndongo kingdom and conquer more areas and get more slaves, because these slaves were very strong. Remember, they were mostly warriors. And so they could do a lot of plantation work back in Portugal. So they wanted more. They continued to attack different villages under Ndongo's control. And so Ngola's warriors were always fighting and fighting. Now, many years later, Ndongo died, Ngola Kiluwanje died, and his son took over. His son was the father of this woman I told you about, Queen Nzinga. Now, this man became the next king. His own name was Ngola Mabande. Now, Ngola Mabande had his own children. He had wives, and his wives had sons. But he fell in love with another beautiful woman who became his concubine or his mistress. That woman had a baby girl. Of course, he already had sons. So, the baby girl was never going to be an heir to his throne. But she was so smart. In fact, when she was born, her umbilical cord was tied around her neck. And when an umbilical cord is tied around the neck of a baby, yes?
My mom told me if somebody's in Yoruba culture, if somebody's umbilical cord is tied around the neck, the person is named Ano.
Wow, thank you for sharing that with us. When a baby survives and comes out born with the umbilical cord tied around the neck, it means that it has overcome a major challenge in childbirth because the umbilical cord can suffocate the baby. So such a baby in African culture is believed to have spiritual destiny. It's believed that that child is destined to be great. And in Ndongo kingdom, it was the same belief that they had. So that girl, Nzinga, they gave her the name Nzinga, which means to twist and turn. That is, she twisted and turned and overcame a challenge. And so everybody's eyes were on her. Her father loved her so much. He allowed her to follow him everywhere, including to great council meetings with his great chiefs, or when vassals came from other kingdoms to speak to the king. He allowed her to sit in the courts where he was attending to kingly matters. And so Nzinga watched from childhood how her father ruled over his kingdom. He also allowed her to gain military training. Imagine that, a girl receiving military training. She was trained in great warfare, and she was an expert in the use of the battle axe. Nzinga, as young as she was very skillful in the use of the battle axe. But that was not all. The Ngola Mabande discovered that it was important for his daughter to understand the language of the Portuguese. So he allowed her go to school in the king's palace. He brought in scholars who trained her in the language of Portuguese. So she grew up knowing how to speak and write in Portuguese language. She was also trained in diplomacy, in warfare, in many skillful areas. She also learned theology and understood Christianity, the Christian doctrine that the Portuguese practiced, because many of them were Catholics. So she was trained in all these things. But she was not going to become the heir to the throne, because the heir to the throne must be male. Now, throughout his reign, her father, Ngola Mabande, was always fighting wars, trying to resist the Portuguese, and Nzinga saw that. Many years later, her father died, and his son, her brother, was the heir, so he was crowned as the next king. But he was not equal to his father. He didn't have the great strength of character his father had. He was very paranoid, and so saw most people as enemies that would one day want to take over the throne from him. He therefore killed his other brothers, who were also born, his male siblings. He killed all of them. He had his female siblings sterilized so that they would not give birth again. His sisters, he made sure that they were sterilized. But worst of all, his sister Nzinga, who had already had a son, he took her son and had him killed so that her son would not one day threaten the throne that he reigned over. That was very wicked. And Nzinga never forgot that. She packed her remaining sisters, two of her sisters, and fled to the neighboring kingdom of Matamba. But soon after, her brother requested for her assistance. He needed somebody to go to the Portuguese governor who was sitting in the area called Luanda. Remember, the Portuguese had come and conquered that area and built a port there. He wanted her to go and represent him in peace negotiations, because the constant attacks were weakening his kingdom. And every time they attacked, they were taking more of his warriors as slaves. So he wanted negotiations with the Portuguese. And who best to negotiate with them than somebody who could speak and write in their language? So, Nzinga, with a whole gamut of attendants and, domestic servants, made her way through her vast kingdom, which was ravaged, because remember, the Portuguese soldiers had been attacking and attacking. So as she was passing her kingdom, she saw that the kingdom had become so desolate. Farmlands were ravaged, villages had been destroyed. Everywhere looked horrible, different from her childhood. By the time she arrived in Luanda, she was completely sad. When she arrived in Luanda to see the governor, she was welcomed into the governor's chambers. But guess what? The governor sat on a high chair, a high throne-like chair, and placed a mat on the floor for Nzinga to sit on the floor. By sitting on the chair and putting a mat on the floor, she had only two options. Either sit on the mat and look up at the governor as if she was a subject or a servant to the governor, or stand while the governor sat and also appear awkward like a servant speaking to her master. Nzinga looked at the setting. She snapped her fingers to one of her attendants, and that one immediately got the memo. The servant immediately crouched on the floor, presenting her body as a chair. And Nzinga sat on her servant, eye to eye, shoulder to shoulder with the Portuguese governor, and began her negotiations. Speaking in fluent Portuguese, the governor was taken aback. And she was dressed in her finery as an African queen. And she began to make her demands. Do not attack my villages anymore. I am representing my brother, the king of Ndongo. We no longer want your resistance. We have a treaty with Portugal, but you have violated that treaty. Violated means betrayed. She began to remind the governor of all the agreements that Portugal had with Ndongo kingdom that they had betrayed. And speaking in flawless Portuguese, the governor was intimidated. And she made her demands. I don't want your warriors to attack us anymore. Leave us alone. Don't come and take our people as slaves. And in exchange, we will return to you some of your, conquered soldiers that we have kept in our In our cages. We'll return them to you. Because of the treaty we have, we are allies. We are sovereign, and you must recognize the sovereignty of the Ndongo kingdom. You know what sovereignty means? The independence, the right of that kingdom to exist by itself without any external or foreign control. And so the governor looked at her and said, "You're not ready for negotiations." But she was ready. She said, on the condition that I will be baptized as a Catholic. She had already planned in advance that she would deceive the Portuguese by claiming to accept their religion of Catholicism, of Christianity. They would think that she has accepted their ways, but no. She was only using that as a form of disguise, to make them believe that she was willing to submit to their ways and to their beliefs. And in that guise, she would then have access to their palace and their courts, and she would continue to plot her strategy. So she went under their baptism. She accepted the name of the governor's wife. The governor was called Ana de Souza. The governor's wife was called Ana de Souza. And when they baptized her, Nzinga took the name Dona Ana de Souza. So they were very happy. The governor's wife became her Catholic godmother. They started inviting Nzinga to their palace frequently, where she would be studying them, listening to them as they spoke Portuguese, and learning all their plans and their strategies. For a while, peace began to reign once again in the Ndongo kingdom. The Portuguese stopped their raids. Eventually, when he died, Nzinga took over the reign of the Ndongo kingdom. Now, after her brother had left, his son was sent away to live with another chief in another village. Nzinga heard all the criticisms, and she instructed that all those who criticized her should be immediately killed. She began to reign with a really iron fist. So some people fled her kingdom to the neighboring kingdom of Matamba because they were afraid that this warrior queen would have them killed if they expressed any views against her. Nzinga knew that she had to be strong and appear to be hardened and ruthless. If not, the people serving under her would question her leadership because she was a woman. She began to dress like a woman. A man rather. She stopped wearing the clothes of a woman and began to dress like a man, just so that whenever she appeared publicly, she would inspire the confidence of those people in her kingdom who would begin to trust that she was fierce enough to rule them and to protect them. Nzinga also had different men in her harem who she instructed to dress like women. So those things began to confuse a lot of people. She did a lot of strange things. But amidst all of this, she was a brilliant military strategist. Remember, she had been going to the Portuguese court and listening to them and all their plans, so she knew their ways. She began to train her warriors. She began to build underground tunnels so that if the Portuguese attacked, the villagers could hide there. Nzinga had a lot of brilliant military strategies that she employed. Soon, she started conquering neighboring kingdoms. She conquered the neighboring kingdom of Matamba, expanded the kingdom of Ndongo. Ndongo kingdom began to grow and grow. And whenever she conquered neighboring kingdoms, she took their own warriors as slaves and sold those warriors to the Portuguese. Those slaves, remember, prisoners of war. Those warriors of those kingdoms became her slaves. So she sold them as prisoners of war, and they became slaves to the Portuguese. And the money that she gained, she used it to buy weapons, buy weapons, and she continued to lead more wars. And so for the 40 years that she reigned as queen, Ndongo became such a great kingdom. She resisted Portuguese control and Portuguese, dominance. She continued to fight the Portuguese. She was a thorn in the flesh of the Portuguese colonizers. They simply could not take over Ndongo because of Nzinga's military prowess and her diplomatic, skillfulness. At some point, they did not trust her anymore. They discovered that she was only pretending to be a Catholic, and she was using her knowledge of fluent Portuguese to learn their ways. So they stopped allowing her access to their courts, because they knew that this woman is a cunning, brilliant strategist. But in 40 years, the Ndongo kingdom was inconquerable. At some point, Nzinga forced the king of Portugal to renounce his control or interest over the Ndongo kingdom. And Portugal entered a treaty that was many years later recognized in Lisbon, the Treaty of the Independence of the Ndongo Kingdom. It was not until after she died and her sister took over the reign of Ndongo that Portuguese colonizers finally took over the territory of Ndongo. But for the 40 years of Nzinga's reign, Portugal was unable to win Nzinga's warriors and take over her territory, and she was a woman queen. At some point, she told them not to refer to her as a queen, and she began to go by the title Ngola, which means king. So Nzinga, for many years of her reign, was referred to as Ngola Nzinga, which is unheard of in African history. She is a famous, respected, and very renowned warrior, a woman who for 40 years when she reigned was impossible to win her territory. And the Portuguese, despite their military weapons, sophisticated soldiers and fighters, could simply not defeat Nzinga of Angola. So never forget, kids, that in Africa we have produced great kings and queens who have resisted the colonizers, who have fought victorious wars, and who have built great kingdoms, ancient kingdoms. Amongst that list of kings and queens is the famous queen Nzinga of the Ndongo kingdom, which is now modern day Angola. She conquered Ndongo and conquered neighboring kingdoms, including the kingdom of Matamba. And those major kingdoms today are what we recognize in the modern world as the Angola nation. Is that not exciting? So what did you learn about this great queen or king, however she liked to be called? Yes, Chimamanda.
So she was a very ancient queen, and she worked hard for her empire. She was very determined to please her empire, and I noticed that she thought before she made her decisions, like when she snapped for her servant to come and sit on her, and her servant too, very
loyal. Exactly. Very correct. She was a great thinker. Remember, she is remembered in history as one of the most brilliant strategists. She thinks before she acts. And she thinks long range. She doesn't think just 1 step, 2 steps. She thinks 4 steps ahead. And that was why she was always able to defeat the Portuguese soldiers and governors. Thank you for listening to this wonderful story. When you have some time, you can go back and study more about Queen Nzinga of Angola.
Thank you for playing my favorite African game with me. Now let's find the other items in the game. Starting with an African practice that begins with the letter D. Dash. Dash. It means giving a small gift like money, food, or something useful to someone. It is a cultural practice common amongst people in parts of West Africa, especially in countries like Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and Cameroon, where people give small gifts such as money, food, or other tokens to show appreciation, respect, or simply goodwill. A dash implies thank you, well done, or I value you. Though it may be called different names, the practice of dash is common in many parts of Africa. It is a flexible and informal way of building relationships, whether by thanking someone for help, honoring elders, or easing social interactions. The dash is entirely voluntary, although social expectations might make it customary. Though occasionally compared to the Western idea of a tip, a dash goes beyond transactions and reflects a deeper sense of community, reciprocity, and human connections. Have you dashed someone a gift recently?
Let's move on now to another important segment during your visit. I want to share with you a great African proverb. Would you like to listen to an African proverb? Yes, Jamloju? He wants to read a proverb? Okay, so let's have you read. Ooh, I like this proverb. Let's read this one from the country Malawi.
He who splits his own firewood warms himself twice.
I like the look of confusion on your faces. It's such a great proverb. I'll read it loudly once again. Thank you. He who splits his own firewood warms himself twice. Do you have any idea what it means? Okay, I'll tell you. This proverb is teaching us to be self-reliant, to be responsible for our own needs and our own, life. It's saying that, using this example of he who splits his own firewood. In ancient Africa, firewood was a great resource. Firewood is used to cook, used to, build weapons, because with firewood, you can build a fire. And fires are very important. They are sources of energy, like I said, for cooking, for making tools for the farm, for making tools for hunters, for making tools for warriors. Fires, blacksmithing, exactly. So fires are very important. And those who pick firewood, so they used to go and gather firewood. So when they say that if you pick your own firewood, then anytime you are cold, you can use it as many times as you want. But if you have to beg other people for firewood, you will be dependent on them. And it's only what they give you that you must manage. So it's teaching us to be self-dependent, to be self-reliant, to take responsibility for our own needs and our own lives. Don't always be at the mercy of people begging for handouts. Why don't you go and pick your own firewood or cut your own firewood instead of begging others for firewood? It teaches us to be hardworking. It teaches us to be, to go out to solve our own problems and problems of others. It teaches us to be resourceful, right? So that's what the proverb is saying. If you want to be in control of your life, then be resourceful for yourself. Don't depend on others. Don't beg others for firewood. If you beg others for firewood, you only have to manage what they are willing to give you. But if you create your own or go and pick your own, then it's at your disposal. Anytime you want it, you can use it. Do you understand it now? So it teaches us we must be what?
Self-reliant.
And resourceful. We must be resourceful and hardworking or independent. I love that. So don't depend on others for your life, for your needs. Depend on yourself. Work hard for yourself. Be resourceful by yourself. It's such a great proverb, and that's probably why the people of Malawi are very hard workers.
Next, what is an animal native to Africa that starts with the letter D? Donkey! A donkey is a strong and helpful animal that belongs to the same family as horses, though it is smaller with long ears, a short mane, and a sturdy body. Long ago, donkeys came from wild animals in Africa called the African wild ass, which lived in dry, hot lands. The major types of wild donkeys were the Nubian and Somali wild donkeys. And the donkeys we have today come from these early African animals. People in North Africa and Egypt began caring for and using donkeys about 6,000 years ago because they were very useful. Donkeys can carry heavy loads like water, food, firewood, and farm produce. And they can walk long distances, even in tough conditions. In many African villages, donkeys have helped families travel to markets and move their goods. They're known for being patient, hardworking, and very reliable companions. Would you like to have a donkey?
I think that's a great point to move on to the next part of this important visit of yours, where we talk about wealth. The Mansa Musa way of making wealth. Remember, the great King Mansa Musa teaches us that we too could be great wealthy people if we understand money and manage it properly. Last week I gave you an assignment. After we discussed money as a tool, we talked about why it's important to save part of that tool. Did you do what I asked you to do?
Yes, Koko.
Okay, so you've been able to save up some money. How much were you able to save, Jamiloju? You saved 500 naira. Where did you get it from? Speak up. Church. Somebody gave it to you in church? How did you get it? Wow, so you answered the question and you won that prize, 500 naira. I love it. And instead of spending it, you saved the entire thing. That's very smart. Because one day, if it's a rainy day, as they say, or when there's an emergency, then you will have in your pocket or your piggy bank 500 naira to immediately draw on. Any other person was able to save some money? Oh, great. Okay.
I was able to save 500 naira because my dad and I were playing a game and he was trying to make me catch it, and I got the money and I wanted to spend it on candy or something good to eat, but then I decided to save my money.
Oh, good. Wonderful. You next, Salama. Lovely. Wow. Wow, I love that. So he got 500 naira to use in school to buy snacks, but he decided to save it up instead. So you didn't eat for that day or the whole week? Just one day? For that day. So he saved up his money. I love that. And now we're going to discuss something very important in today's session about money the Mansa Musa way. Money, remember, is a tool. But you see, we don't just get money magically. Do I just do and I see money in my hand? So we have to understand how money comes to us, right? Money comes by us earning money. And how do we earn money? Okay.
We can work or do things for your neighbors.
Beautiful. We work, and in working, we are using our skills to solve a problem for somebody, or using our skills to create value, and because of that, we earn money from the use of those skills or from the problems we solve. If you do something for your neighbor, you solve a problem for your neighbor, and they say, take this, you have earned this money. Or if you get a job and use your skills, at the end of the day, the person who hired you says, ooh, you did it so well, take this money. So money comes when we earn it through the use of our skills and our hard work. That is why in Africa, we teach working hard. It is a value in Africa that we must work hard and we must add value. You wanted to say something?
Another way we can earn money is like trade.
Trade. I love that. And that brings us to Mansa Musa. He traded a lot of goods that Mali Kingdom had. Remember, Mali had gold, Mali had salt, Mali had cowries, Mali had ivory. They had a host of great natural resources, and he sold them. So by trading in the goods that you have, you exchange them for what? Money as well. By working hard to solve people's problems or providing a skill that people need, you make money as well. I'm going to give you an assignment. I want you to go home and think about 3 skills that you have that you can use to make money from. Maybe it's drawing, or making bracelets, or baking, or making amazing music that people love to listen to. Do you have a skill that people would be willing to pay you money for? Don't tell me. Go home, reflect on it, and the next session you will share 3 of those skills. 1, 1, 1. Those skills that you believe you can use to make money from.
Next, let's find an African food that begins with the letter D. Dodo. Dodo is a very popular and delicious food in Nigeria. The word dodo comes from the Yoruba language, and it simply means fried ripe plantain. To make dodo, people slice ripe plantains into pieces and fry them in hot oil until they become golden brown on the outside and soft and sweet on the inside. Because ripe plantains are naturally sweet, dodo has a delicious sweet taste that many children and adults love. Dodo is often eaten with other foods such as fried eggs, peppered stew, vegetables, or rice. It is especially tasty with jollof rice, making a colorful and filling meal. You can find dodo in many homes, in parties, restaurants, and even street food sellers. It is one of those meals that bring people together during celebrations. Have you tasted dodo?
It's been such a great visit. But before you go, yes.
Can also earn money by doing things for other people, but being hardworking.
Yes, you're very correct. By working hard and doing things for people using your skills. Yes. So think about the skills you have that you can use to do things for people that will make them pay you some money. Okay? And you come and share that with us during our next session. Finally, as is my tradition, I always love to introduce you to a great role model before you go. Have you seen this woman before? Yes.
Her name is Bolanle Awe.
Exactly. Bolanle Awe, a Nigerian woman of Yoruba descent who is a fantastic role model to African children all over the world. She was a great historian who insisted in the time of British colonization that Africa has its own history that is capable of being studied as an academic discipline. And she insisted on studying African history during her postgraduate years in England as a student. Because of her insistence, Bolanle Awe became a revered historian who has published a lot of works about Yoruba and women's history and African history. But best of all, she is the first woman to ever become a lecturer in the University of Ibadan, Nigeria. The University of Ibadan is Nigeria's first university. It is the premier university. And before her, there was no other woman who was formally appointed as a lecturer. There was once a visiting scholar, a foreigner, but she was a fellow, a scholar visiting. She was never fully appointed as a lecturer until the great Bolanle Awe became the first female lecturer in the premier university of Ibadan. So she's an incredible role model for you. She was a woman who grew up with truth and conviction about her past and her history, and she was bold and full of audacity to stand up to people who were saying to her, you have no history. But she said no, politely but firmly, I have a history and I'm going to study it whether you like it or not. So it encourages all of you to have what? Conviction, boldness, and what? Audacity. To speak up always for the truth, to pursue your goals, overcoming obstacles that stand in your way.
And finally, what is an object original to Africa that starts with the letter D? The djembe. Djembe is a famous drum in West Africa. and it was first made by the Mandinka people in the region that is now modern-day Mali. The djembe has a goblet shape, which means it is wide at the top and narrow at the bottom. It is usually carved from a single piece of wood, and the top is covered with animal skin, which makes the drum sound when it is played. The djembe can make different sounds, depending on how it is played or how skillful the drummers are. For hundreds of years, the djembe has been used during celebrations and important events such as weddings, harvest, festivals, and rites of passage. When people hear the djembe, they often come together to dance, sing, and celebrate as a community. Would you like to play the djembe?
Thank you so much for spending time with me during this visit. Do you have any last parting words before I release you? Awesome. Take care and see you next week, guys. Bye.
Bye, Koko.